All right, good morning. Welcome to Daily Dose. And so we've gotten the fourth out of the way. This year's halfway over. I think one day last week, was the halfway mark of the year. Crazy how fast this year is going, but it is. And man, we had a great weekend. I hope you did. I'm hoping I'm going to remember how to work tomorrow today when I head back in because we had felt like we had a long holiday, or did to me, right? We were off Friday, all right, because I'm off on Friday, and then I was off Monday, and so what a great weekend. We took the Tamster's new car and made our journey, and man, what a great day! And just had a really just a marvelous holiday. Sunday church was rich as we talked about Romans 8 and our own spiritual declaration of independence from sin and powerful truth. Be a great read, listen for you if you want to go to Restoration Gathering Church. You can listen to that sermon if you're not tired of listening to me here. And it was a good day. So we've enjoyed in the holiday, the fourth. We went to Trussville, hung out in the mall with a lot of people. Watched some fireworks. Had a great day. So hope yours was good as well. And today we're going to jump back into the truth in Mark chapter 15, and we're coming close to the end of the book of Mark, and it's a powerful story. I'm not sure how far we're going to get today because I don't want to rush through this, and I want to find a break. I think we're going to get to the crucifixion, the beginning of it. We'll stop there and we'll look at that tomorrow. So let's just kind of see it in review. We are in Mark chapter 15, and we're going to pick it up in verse 15. And then I'm going to kind of give you a review as we move forward. But it says, wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed over to be crucified. So that's how somber the scriptures report it, just kind of as a fact. Now, let's kind of talk about that before we get there. So he's gone through his trials, right? He was at Annas, and then Caiaphas, and then Pilate, and then Herod, and then back to Pilate. So he's seen 1, 2, 3, 4 people, Pilate twice, and so that's where he is. Pilate, at the end of this, after the end of his inquisition, which didn't last that long because he probably got there somewhere around 2 in the morning, and by 9 o'clock he's on the cross. So it's a brief amount of time that this mockery of a trial has taken place. But at the end of it, Pilate has this to say. He says, I find no guilt in this man. I find nothing. And Herod had said the same thing. I find no guilt in this man. Took him back to Pilate. So the Roman authorities, who are responsible party for the crucifixions, so we don't find anything in him. Now, here's another thing that's in Mark 15:10. A little brief before that, it says this. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Pilate asked. And then it says this, knowing it was out of self-interest, envy is the term in the Greek, that the chief priest had handed over Jesus to him. So what's this whole thing about envy? That's what the scripture says. Jesus is being crucified because the chief priest is envious of the power and respect and all of that Jesus has, and they want to crucify him. So this is the whole thing. Now, if we were to look specifically at what they accused him of, it would have been rabble-rousing, right? Stirring up a crowd. It would have been claiming to be God, blasphemy. It would have been destruction of property. He was going to tear down the temple. He didn't, but he would have. They were like, he's going to do that. And insurrection when it comes to Rome, because they said he wasn't going to pay his taxes, even though clearly that question that they asked him, do we render? He says, render to Caesar unto Caesar's. He's saying, hey, you pay your taxes, right? All of that's a sham. Everything in that is a sham. That's where we come to. Now, the crowd is now shouting, crucify him. right? The soldiers led him away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. So here's what's going on. He's just finished being before Pilate in the house, out, stepping into the courtyard, talking to the people, going back in, questioning Jesus, coming back out, uh, decides, okay, I don't find anything wrong with him. How about Barabbas? No, we want Christ, and we want Jesus, and so crucify him. And so that whole thing takes place. Now, Pilate, not wanting to have anything to do with it, washes his hands and says, I am innocent of this man's blood here. And he hands him over to be crucified. So the guards take him into the praetorium. That's the palace is this huge place. Josephus, one of the historians, says it had like 100 bedroom kind of thing. You could sleep over 100 people. It was a gathering place. That's where a lot of the people had gathered. And so in this palace there is the praetorium. It's kind of where the soldiers hung out, that kind of thing. Now it says that the whole Roman cohort went in there. So understand, Jesus, having been mocked and spit on, and he'll one more time he will endure that, is now brought by the handful of soldiers into the praetorium. And then it says they brought in the whole cohort. And you remember from one of our studies earlier, that's 600 soldiers. 600 soldiers now have come into this palace area, into this praetorium, uh, and they are now going to begin to mock him. And this is what the scriptures say. It says, the soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. That's the praetorium guard. 600 people in there to make fun of Jesus. They put a purple robe on him and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set him on him. Now, the historians will tell us that those thorns, some of them could be 12 inches long. So we're talking about a rather thick wreath or crown that they would have put on him, and no doubt pressed it into them so that those things would pierce into his skin. And this is what they have done to him. And then it says, they began to call out to him, Hail, King of the Jews. Now, this is complete mockery at this point. Hail, King of the Jews, because that is who he said he was. They said, are you a king? He said, I'm the king. Yes, I am king. You have rightly said I am king, but my kingdom's not of this world. For if it were, we'd be doing war right now, and you would be losing. And so it says, again, they struck him on the head with a staff, and they spit on him. So they had a reed, a bamboo, fairly thick, and they would just beat him with it. And they're spitting on him. Now, one of the others says that they put that reed in his hand, kind of like a scepter, and so they're mocking him the whole way. Falling on their knees, they pay homage to him. You got 600 soldiers going, oh, hail King Jesus. All of this mockery is going on. And when they had mocked him, it says that they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him, and then they led him to be crucified. Now, what some of the other writers add that they don't is that there was a flogging that took place, a scourging. It was a beating by the Romans. It would have been your classic cat of nine tails. There would have been a wooden handle, leather strip. At the end of that leather strip would have been nine of those leathers left. So woven together of 9 strands of leather. The ends of them would have had bone, glass, metal, all attached to them, meant to inflict great punishment. There would have been 2 soldiers, if it's like any other scourging that took place in Roman time where we have history of how it worked. You would have 2 soldiers on either side of him. He's either strapped to a table, hanging from a pole. There were several ways in which they would do this. And then they would beat one, and then the other side would beat one. And so when they would slap, they would pull, right? So there, what happens when you're done, and I'm not trying to be gross about this, because the issue is more on the mockery from a scriptural standpoint than it is the bruising, but Isaiah speaks about these things. Is it literally, and you can imagine, at the end of 39 of those, if that's what it was, some say it could have been more, but that was the standard deal that was inflicted. Because by law they could only do 40, and so they would do 39 in case somebody has miscounted. They didn't want to violate their own code of ethics, so to speak. You would have skin that was ripped, you would have muscle that had been ripped, and you would have arteries that had been shredded. So his whole back at this point would be entirely useless in that sense. Just the sheer torture of all of those nerve endings exposed would have been what it was. Then it says they delivered him over to be crucified. So we're going to get to the cross today, and then we'll stop there. So as we go on, so that's the setting. That's what's happened. And it says, then they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes back on him, which had already been bloody from some of the other beatings and things like that. The pummeling of the face, the ripping of the beard out. Isaiah said that that's what would take place, and so they've been pulling hair, his beard out. They've been punching him in the face. They've been beating him. So he's a bloody mess. Isaiah says that he was unrecognizable at the end of this. So this is what the Savior of the world, God Most High, endured, encased in flesh, to give you and me our freedom from sin and renewal and grace in Him. What other God? What other God is like that? Right? I mean, there is no other God. You can make this a fairy tale. You can make this whatever you want. We too cutesify it in too many times, and we tend to miss the point. Even in our Resurrection Day stories, we talk about the cross and all of those things, but we fail to acknowledge and grab a hold of the truth that the God that we serve is the most gracious, loving, selfless God that ever has been. And there's only one God, but I mean all the others that men bring forth, Muhammad, Buddha, any other God, none compare. Not one Roman God. They're all selfish slobs compared to the God that we serve. Only our God would do what is being done here, because He is the gracious God. He's full of compassion, full of mercy, slow to anger, abounding in loving kindness. This is who we serve, and this is what we're seeing taking place right here. So let's now move into the journey to Golgotha, and then we'll come back, and tomorrow we'll talk the particulars of the kingdom. Of the crucifixion. But it says this. It says, a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. So now they're leading him away. It's early in the morning. It's 8, something like that, probably in the morning, and they're so the streets are beginning to bustle. Everyone's the sunrise, and everyone's gotten about, and so they're making their way into the city to do their business, to buy their necessities, to do whatever it is that they do. And so there is a throng of people that are there. And as I told you the other day, it was custom to make fun of those heading up to the place of the cross. And so it was in those days something that people would do. They would ridicule. It was, not that that's a ton of ridicule that goes on today, but there is some sensibility and sensitivity about us these days that we don't openly make fun of people. You got your little small warriors behind their keyboard, doing that. But face to face, there's not much of that. But it was common to ridicule those who were mentally challenged and those who were homeless and poor and disabled and had no limbs. Those were the outcasts, and it was fair game to make fun of them. And so Jesus is no other, along with all the other convicts. And so that's what's taking place. There's this mocking and things going forth. And so the Romans are with them. I don't know if it's the entire cohort or it's just a band that was attached to him. And so they're heading up to the cross. And Jesus, having just endured all of that beating, physically is going at a slower pace than they want. They want this done. You can hear the chief priest in the ears of the Romans. Get him up there, get him up there. They're trying to get this thing done before Passover so their hands are clean and they can get on with their religious stupidity. And so this is what's taking place. And so the Romans see a man named Simon. He's got 2 sons, Alexander and Rufus, and he's enlisted into, hey, you, get over here. And you don't have a choice, right? If a soldier asks you to carry his bags 1 mile, carry it 2. Remember Jesus talking about that? Because you didn't have a choice. That's how it worked in those days. The Romans were gods among themselves in that sense. So, hey, Simon, you're in. So whatever happens to his kids, he goes in, grabs the cross, and carries it for Jesus. Now, the interesting thing about this, church history, but along with the scripture to the Romans, you remember Mark wrote this gospel to the Romans. That was his audience. He puts this in here, I think, for a very specific person, because when Paul later writes to the Romans, he says this. He tells the Romans, he says, greet Rufus, a choice man in the church, along with his mother. And so what I find amazing here, and it's the same Rufus, the history tells us that, the scriptures give us that name, that that even in that journey, that where the Jews are trying to destroy his reputation, God sovereignly took Simon and his two sons and brought them to a saving understanding of who this man was. So that the effect of that is that Rufus was a mighty leader in the Church of Rome as it went forth into this great persecution. I marvel at that, how God just does what he does to get people to the cross and to salvation. So here's a man minding his own business, got his kids, probably his Passover lambs. He's just trying to get his sacrificial Passover celebration going so he can get on with the festivities and all of that. Drug into the middle of this scene. His name is ever etched in this story of Christ carrying this cross up the mountain side. And that's what we find. It's an amazing, amazing story. So it says, that was passing by on his way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. Verse 22, they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And you already know this, but the mountainside, there used to be a place in Gatlinburg when I was a kid, and we would take these back roads going in there through Maryville and all of that. And you would see, it looked like the face of an Indian carved on the side. Those of you who are and it may still be there. I just remember as a kid, you would see it, and it looked just like the profile of a man. This is what that was. And so when you looked at this mountain from a certain angle, it looked like a skull. And so they called the mountain Golgotha, means the place of the skull. So there they offer him wine mixed with myrrh, and he said, I don't want it. So here he is, just that was kind of a slight medication. If there was any compassion about them, that was probably it. And he's like, nah, I'm not doing this. He is saying, hey, I'm going to endure the full brutality of this whole thing. And then it says, and they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. And so we'll pick that story up tomorrow. I think I've got just enough time maybe to read to you. I'd like to read to you the entirety of this, piecing all of the Gospels together, the pieces that Mark leaves out. So if you will, I'm just going to read it with very little commentary, and we'll get on with our day. Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put on a purple robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Hail, O King of the Jews, they began to call out to him. Falling on their knees in front of him, they worshipped and mocked him. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head and the face again and again. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews, look, I'm bringing him out to you. Let him know I find no basis of guilt in him. When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, here is the man. Behold the man. As soon as the chief priest and the other officials saw him, they shouted, crucify! But Pilate answered, you take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for charge against him. The Jews insisted, we have a law, and according to the law, that man must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid and went back inside the palace. Where do you come from? He asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. Do you refuse to speak to me? Pilate said. Don't you realize I have power to either free you or crucify you? Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. From then on, Pilate just tried to set Jesus free, but the Jews kept shouting, if you let this man go, you're no friend of Caesar. Anyone claiming to be king opposes Caesar. When Pilate heard this, He brought Jesus out, sat down at the judge's seat, and placed in a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of Passover. It was the 6th hour. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king? Pilate asked. We have no king but Caesar, the chief priest answered. Wow. You talk about a mockery. With loud shouts, and they instantly demanded that he be crucified, and the shouts prevailed. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but he instead an uproar was starting, he decided to grant their demand. He took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. All the people answered, let his blood be on us and on our children. Can you imagine what the wrath of God they are inviting into their lives? Finally, Pilate surrendered Jesus to their will and handed him over to them to be crucified. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. They took off the purple robe, put on his own clothes on him, then led him away to be crucified. They led him away carrying his own cross, and they were going out. They met a man from Cyrene named Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. He was passing by on his way from the country, and they seized Simon, put the cross on him, and forcibly made him carry it behind Jesus. And a large number of people were following. We'll pick that story up there tomorrow. Man, Lord bless you guys. What a great God we serve to endure that for you and me and for our sin. May God have mercy on us and be gracious to us. Love you guys. I'll see you in the morning, Lord willing.